What is an RM back squat? Today we talk about what is an RM back squat, why you need to know your RM back squat, and what are RM back squat loads. RM back squat simply refers to repetition maximum back squat. So the R stands for repetition and the M stands for maximum. What does that mean? Well, it's the maximum amount of repetition you can do with a given weight, or better, at a given repetition. So let me explain. A 1 RM back squat is the 1 repetition maximum. So the load you can lift in a back squat for 1 repetition. A 3 RM back squat is the 3 repetition maximum. So the load that you can lift for 3 repetitions and not 4. A 5 RM back squat is a load you can lift for 5 repetitions, but not 6. Yeah, so the idea is clear. RM means repetition maximum. So the last repetition is actually the last repetition. You can't do 1 more repetition. How can the RM back squat help? Well, for example, if you want to know your 1 RM, so the repetition, the weight that you can lift for 1 repetition, you can test that with multiple RMs. So for example, you choose a weight that you can lift for multiple repetitions, let's say 3 or 4. You lift that weight and you note down the maximum number of repetitions you have done. And from that you can calculate the 1 RM of your back squat. So how can that be of any help? Well, if you know your 1 RM back squat, that can help you to prescribe training intensities. So for example, if you want to work on maximum strength, you need to train at 85% or above. Yeah, so if you know your 1 RM is, let's say, 100 kilos, I make it easy for myself to calculate. You know you need to work with 85 kilos or more. If you want to work on hypertrophy, for example, you know you need to work in a range from 65 to 85, depending whether you want to work on functional hypertrophy or non-functional hypertrophy. But again, you know, 65% to 85% of your 1 RM, choosing the same example of the 100 kilos, you know you need to work with 65 kilos to 85 kilos. And then you can make the same calculations for power or strength endurance. So if you want to work on power on the ballistic part, so you work with 20% 1 RM to 50% 1 RM. So if your back squat is predicted back squat 1 RM is 100 kilos, you know you need to work with 20 to 50 kilos and then work ballistically, so jump squats, for example. If you want to work on strength endurance, same thing. Depending what type of strength endurance you want to work on, you know you need to choose loads between 30% 1 RM to 60% 1 RM. Same example of the 100 kilos, so 30 kilos to 60 kilos, and then for the given amount of repetitions. Why is it helpful to test multiple 1 RMs to determine the 1 RM? So why don't you test the 1 RM? Contrary to the belief that 1 RM testing is dangerous, I don't think 1 RM testing is dangerous. If you have the technical proficiency, 1 RM testing is pretty safe. Obviously, if you don't have the technical proficiency, 1 RM testing is not very safe. It's the same as driving a car. If you don't know how to drive a car, it's pretty dangerous. If you know how to drive a car, it's pretty safe. But what are the benefits of multiple RM testing to determine the 1 RM? One of the benefits is, in order to test the 1 RM, you also need to have a training experience of working at higher intensities, so 90% of the 1 RM or above. And this training experience normally you only get after, well, probably 18 months or 24 months of training. So the question stands out, what do you do with people who are just started out and have a training history of half a year or something? So then it's easier to test multiple 1 RMs, because in order, coming back to the point of you need to have the training history, you can put higher loads onto them, but they are not experienced to produce an effort against these high loads, and you might not get to the potential 1 RM. For that reason, it's easier to test multiple 1 RMs, a 5 RM, maybe going down to a 3 RM, but probably 5 RM or 6 RM, and then make your calculations from that RM to the 1 RM, the predicted 1 RM. How can that look? how do these conversions look? For example, a 3 RM is around 90 to 93% of your 1 RM. A 5 RM back squat is around 85 to 87% of your 1 RM, and a 10 RM back squat is around 70 to 72% of your 1 RM. Very important here is that the relation between multiple 1 RM and the 1 RM is very individual. So that means the number I've outlined are a guideline, so that can change from person to person. Yeah, it's individual between different individuals. It's also important to note that the further away you're from your 1 RM, the less accurate these numbers are. So if you're testing a 10 RM, the predicted 1 RM is less accurate than if you're testing a 3 RM. And for athletes, it's also important to note that depending on the sport you're doing, this relation changes. So endurance athletes are able to do more repetitions at a higher percent of their 1 RM, whilst strength athletes are the other way around. So the lower you get, for example, 60% of the 1 RM, you can do around 15 to 20 repetitions. For strength athletes, they'll probably only be able to do 10 or 12. Okay, so what are RM loads in a back squat? RM loads refer to repetition maximum loads. So that means that you are training to failure or near failure. Yeah, so if you prescribe a training program saying, okay, let's do 5 repetitions at a 5 RM, that means you have to do 5 repetitions at a 5 RM, so which means the last repetition is the last repetition. So there's no repetition left in the tank. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that depends a little bit what you're training for. If you're interested in hypertrophy, yes, it's a good thing because it has a high stimulus on muscle growth. If you're an athlete, it's not necessarily the best thing. Why is that? Because the RM loads also you need much more time to recover from RM loads than if you have some repetitions left in the tank. And if you're an athlete and you work with RM loads, it tends to screw up the rest of your training. Training near failure or to failure is suitable for hypertrophy, but if you're working on maximum strength or power, there are different ways to do that. The Spanish school has an interesting concept which I came across when I studied in Madrid and later when I worked in Barcelona, and it's called carácter del esfuerzo. And the idea here is that you test, for example, a 12 RM and you prescribe the repetitions based on the 12 RM. So then they prescribe 3 repetitions at a 12 RM, 4 repetitions at a 12 RM, 6, 8, 10, and 12 repetitions at a 12 RM. Okay, to wrap it up, what is an RM back squat? Basically, RM refers to repetition maximum. This is the maximum number of repetitions you can do at a given weight. You can use multiple RM testing to predict the 1 RM, and you can prescribe training intensities based on RM loads.
Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, you can come over to the website for every topic that I'm covering here. There is the video, so why should you go if the video, you've already seen it here. But there's an article to that video, and that article is more in-depth than what I'm covering here. So feel free to check it out. As usual, if you like the video, like everyone else does, like the video below, leave a comment, whatever. If you don't do it, it's also okay. And if you want me to clarify anything that I have not covered in the video, please leave it as a comment. I do my best to answer it. And also, if you have any topics you want me to cover, you can also leave a comment and I will do my utmost best to cover it in a separate video. Thanks again.